Good morning, everyone. Today's Tuesday. Today we're learning the 10th Perek of Yevamos. Mr. Shem will be finishing Yevamos and starting Ksubas on Erev Pesach next week. And then we have a few days of Yantif, and then we continue with Ksubas on Chol Hamoed. Today's Shir is Lilei Nishmas Rus Simchat Kohen Nachum Simchat Kohen Rishon Marcha Mishepsel Bracha Star Shmuel Leib and Binah Moshe Ben Yosef. May the Nashals have an aliyah before Shlema for Yisrael Baruch Aleh Racha Basfasel Zada Arm Yisrael Berisha and Chayav As the Bebela before Shlema B'Sof Shar Chol Yisrael. And as always, special shout out to our sponsor for Seder Nashim, our good friends at the Imperial Advisory Group. If you need help with your CFO stuff, reach out to them at imperialgrp.com. Okay, here we go. Perek Yud Mishnah Aleph. Ha'isha shehalach bala medina siyam. If a woman's husband went overseas, a bow amru la meis ba'alich, and one witness came and told her that your husband died. And he says, and she went and married another man based on that testimony. And then her first husband later came back. And then they go, oops. She must be divorced from both the first husband and the second husband. Since her first husband was alive and well, then when she married the second man, quote unquote, she was really having, she was over Ashes Ish, adultery. And that's a problem. So she cannot be married to her real husband, and she cannot be married to the second husband. Although the second husband wasn't really a husband because the condition was not really chal, therefore it's an Ashes Ish, and she cannot keep any of them. Tzricha get mizeh, and she must receive a get from both of them before she can marry a third guy. She does not get any money for a ksuba, lo peris, nor the produce from her personal property that her husband took, below mazonos, nor does she receive any payment for food, below, nor for the loss of the worn out property. Lo alzeh. She cannot collect any of these things from either this man or that man. Not the mizeh tax. If she took any of these things, either the ksuba, the produce, the money for food, or the loss of value from her worn out property from either this man or that man, from either her husband or from the adulterer, she must return it. She's not allowed to keep anything. And the children that are born from either man are mamzerim. They are mamzerim. This is like the worst case possible. And if she dies and these men are kohanim, neither man can become tummy to her corpse, because a kohen can only become tummy for his wife when she dies. Only for a wife who is mutter to him. Since this woman is now usher to her first husband, even he may not become tummy for her. And either this man or that man has the right to lost objects that she finds, or to the profits from her work, or to the cancellation of her vows. Okay, so basically in this case, if someone tells a woman that her husband died, she better have real proof, and she better have it certified by Beis Din where she gets remarried, because as the Mishnah just said, that's going to be really messed up. If she is the daughter of Yisrael, who is, someone who's not a Kohen or Levi, she is disqualified from marrying a Kohen, since she was involved in Ashes Ish. Now she's classified as a which is also to a Kohen. And if she's a Bas Levi, she's disqualified from eating Meiser, which is a gift to the Levium. Ubas Kohen Mena Truma, and if she's the daughter of Kohen, she's also disqualified from eating Truma, which can only be eaten by Kohanim. And she's usher a zone is usher to eat Truma. Um, and she's also usher to eat Meiser. And if she dies before either husband, neither the heirs of this man, Yershim Shalzeh, or the heirs of that man, Yershim Shubasa, neither of them inherit the extra money promised to her in the Ksuba. So if the husband dies without children before they divorced her, then both the brothers of both of the um both of the men, they have to do chalitza with her. Both the original husband and the noif have to do chalitza, that they cannot perform yibum that is usher. Rabbi Yossi says, "Ksuba al nichse bala rishon." Her ksuba must be paid by the estate of the first husband. According to Rabbi Yossi, since she did not commit Ashes ish intentionally, it was based on the aidus of one aid, which is not really considered good enough, but she got information and she didn't get it certified, but she did not do it intentionally. She was mistaken how she went about it, but she didn't do it intentionally. She does receive a ksuba payment from her first husband. That's according to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Lezer disagrees, and he says Harishon Zaka b'mitziyasu u'masiyadel u'ba'faris nedereh. First husband has the right to the lost objects that she finds on the profits from her work and the right of cancellation of her vows. He holds that the Chum canceled only her rights, but they did not remove her first husband's rights since he did nothing wrong. He went away on business or to wherever he went, and he came back. He did nothing wrong. It was the second guy who was part of the niyuf, and he has to be punished. But the first husband, what did he do? Rabbi Shimon says, "Biyasa or chalitzasa me'achiv sharishon b'teres sarasa." Bia, mean yibum or chalitza by the brother of her first husband, hatters her co-wife from having to undergo yibum or perform chalitza before remarrying. The first husband died childless, she may perform yibum with his brother, and if she does so, it is a valid yibum, and patters her co-wife from having to perform yibum or chalitza. In addition, a child that she has with her first husband after she married the second guy is not a mamzer. Although she is not permitted to return to him, if she does, her children are not mamzerim. That's according to Rabbi Shimon. And if she marries without the specific permission of the court, because she was told by two valid witnesses that her husband was dead, in which case she does not need the permission of the court to remarry. And then her husband came back with terrorist locks, although she's permitted to return to him. In this case, she is not considered responsible for remarrying unlawfully. The Chavim allowed her to return to her first husband, and the penalties listed in the Mishnah do not apply to her. See, it's the big difference between certifying it with two aids versus only one aid. One aid is not valid for certification. Okay, Mishnah Beis. Nises will be based in if a woman married on the court's authority, right? That a single witness testified that her husband died, and then the court gave her permission to remarry, and her husband came back. Teitze, she must leave both men, upatur min korban, and but she's exempt. She's part there from a kohen chatas. So she still has to. She still listed. She still has even though Beis Din certified it, they she's still chayiv in all the penalties listed in the previous Mishnah, but she does not have to be a korban because the court gave her permission to marry, and a person who sins unintentionally with based on a court ruling is pater from a kohen chatas. Lo nisis a low LP based. However, if she did not marry at the court's authority, rather two witnesses said that her husband had died and she was therefore allowed to marry without consulting the court. If her husband later came back, Tate says she must leave her second husband, but may return to her first husband, as Rosh Shimon had ruled at the end of the previous Mishnah. Um, right. And she must bring a korban chatas for having committed is b'shogeg. However, even though she married based on the court's authority, based on Eid Echad, she's held responsible to a larger extent and penalized in a number of ways, as we learned in the previous Mishnah. Yafa Kalach based in Shepotum and in this respect, that the power of the court is better, that the court's permission exempts her from the Chatas offering. But she's still chayiv in all the punishments. Horoa based in the nas, if the court ruled that she may marry based on a single witness that her husband died, she went and acted immorally, meaning that she married someone whom she would have been asked to marry even if her husband had indeed died and her husband then returned. And she then must bring a kohen for her ish that was b'shogeg. So he tura because the court gave her permission only to marry lawfully. Since she married someone who she wasn't allowed to marry, she cannot claim that she acted with the court's permission and is not exempt from a kohen chatas. Mishnah Gimel, Ha'isha shehalach bala bana lebedina siyam. A woman's husband and her only child went overseas. Vav Amrullah Meis Balech Vachakach Meis Benech. And someone came and told her your husband died and then your child died. And he says, since she remarried based on that edus, since her husband died before his child died, he did not die childless, and she is therefore parted from Yevamos and allowed to marry anyone. And later, all the witnesses told her that the opposite really happened, that her child died before her husband died. Since her husband had no other children, he had that childless, and therefore she had been bound to his brother for Yibam and was forbidden to marry her second husband. Tate say she must leave her new husband, Vlad Rishon, the Acharon, Mamzer, and any child that she had with him, whether before she found out she had been asked to marry him or after she found out, is a Mamzer. So now, in the next case, someone told her, your child died, then your husband died, which means that her husband died childless, and she's therefore bound to her brother for Yibam, and she underwent Yibam. She married the husband's brother based on this information. And the witnesses told her the opposite happened, that her husband died before her son, before her child, which means that her husband did not die childless, and therefore she was not subject to Yibam, and therefore she was also to marry the husband's brother. Tate says she must leave her new husband, the Havlad, Rishon, Achron, Mamzer, and any children that she had with him, whether before she found out that she was also to him or after she found out, is a Mamzer. Amrullah Meis Balech. Another case. If someone told her your husband died, and these days and she remarried based on this testimony, and the witnesses told her he was actually alive at the time that you remarried, but he has now died. Tate says she must leave her new husband since she married him while her husband was still alive, and she committed ish, and a woman who committed Eshes Ish may not remain with the Noef, but Vlad Rishon Mamzer. And any child that she had with him before the first husband died is a Mamzer. Acharon is a Mamzer. However, a child that she had after her first husband died is not a Mamzer because such a child was not born from uh, an Eshes Ish relationship. Amala Meis Balich. If they told her your husband died, another case. And she had kiddushin from by the man. She's now engaged. And then her husband came back. She is allowed, permitted to return to her first husband, since her second marriage was not yet completed. She did not yet have bia with a second husband. She did not commit an avera, and therefore she can return to her original husband. Moreover, furthermore, the second husband does not have to give her a get. And even if the later husband gave her a get, it does not disqualify her from marrying a Kohen. Although a divorced woman may not marry a Kohen, in this case, since the second husband did not have to give her a get, even if he gives her one, it is meaningless. As Zu Darish Elazar ben Masya, this law was learned out by Elazar ben Masya from the pasuk in Emor. The Isha Grusha me Isha. The Kohanim shall not marry a woman who has been divorced from her husband. The phrase divorced from her husband implies that only a woman who is divorced from her legal husband is ushered to a Kohen. Lo me Ish she'eno Isha. And not a woman who has been divorced from a man who is not her legal husband. Since in this case, the man to whom she was engaged to was never her legal husband. Even if he divorced her, she is not disqualified from marrying a Kohen. Okay, Mishnah Daled. Misha Halcha, Ishtal Medina Siyam. Someone's wife went overseas above the Amula Mesa Ishtech. And witnesses came and told him that your wife died. Said he marries her sister based on that testament, that Edus. Then his wife, his original wife, came back. Muteris Laksalo, his original wife is permitted to return to him, since the original wife was still alive. His relationship with her sister was um bia that was unlawful, which does not forbid him from returning to his wife. Right. He can return to his wife, even though he's no longer allowed to live with his new wife with her sister, but he can still return to his original wife. Yeah, who moter b'krovash shnia. In addition, he is allowed to marry the close relatives of the second wife. Shnia muteres b'krova, and the second wife is allowed to marry his close relatives. Even though a person is ushered to marry the close relatives of his spouse, he is ushered to marry the close relatives of a person with whom he had bia. And if the first wife dies, he is allowed to marry the second one, because the person may marry his wife's sister after his wife dies. Witnesses told him, your wife Davina says that he married her sister based on that report. Later, other witnesses told him, your wife was still alive at the time that you married her sister, but she has now died. Vlad Rishon Mamsa, the child that he had with his wife's sister before his wife died, is a Mamsa. Acharon ain't a Mamsa. And the child that they had after his wife died is not a Mamsa, because at that time they were allowed to marry. Mariosi says, any case in which a man's second marriage caused his second wife to become disqualified to others, meaning that if his marriage to his wife's sister caused her to become usher to return to her original husband, Posel Asmo, he disqualifies himself as well, and he may not return to his original wife. Close to Ain Posel Aidechem, but in any case where he does not cause his second wife to become disqualified to others, where a second wife may return to her original husband, Ain Posel Asmo, he does not disqualify himself and may return to his original wife. Mishnah Hey Amlo Mesa Ishtacha. If a man's wife went overseas and witnesses told them your wife died, or not some Achosam and he then married her paternal sister based on that testimony. Mesa Vanasa Achosam Ima, or his second wife, and then his second wife went overseas and he heard that she too died, and he married his second wife's maternal sister. Mesa, Nasa, Achosa, Meavia, and then his third wife went overseas, and he heard that she too had died. He married his third wife's paternal sister. Wow, this is complicated over here. Mesa, Nasa, Achosa, Meima, and his fourth wife then went overseas and he heard that she too had died, and he married his fourth wife's maternal sister. So, with four wives, two of them he marries her paternal sister from her father, and two of them he marries the maternal sister from her mother. And Nimsa Kulam Kayemes, all four women who had gone away were then discovered to be alive. The halach is as follows: Mutter, Rishona, Bishlishis, Chamishis. He is allowed to remain married to the first, third, and fifth wives. Okay, so um, okay, so basically because those marriages really didn't take effect. Um, Upataros mitzar saying, and she exempts her co-wives from Yibam or Chalitza, because these three women are all his legal wives. Ha'aser b'shnia revius, however, it is he's also to remain with the second and fourth wives because each of them is a sister to one of his wives. Accordingly, if he dies childless, by a brother with one of them does not exempt her co-wives from Yibam or Chalitza because these two women are not legally his wives. Yeah, that sounds a little complicated. I mean, how long were these women away for that he was going to marry four other women in such a short time? They talk about like years. It's a wild mission. If he married the second wife after the death of the first one, meaning that the first wife actually died and he then married the second wife. He then married the other three based on incorrect reports, as in the previous case. In this case, he is allowed to marry the second and fourth wives. Here, the second and the fourth are legally his wives, and therefore, if he dies childless and either of them perform Yibam or Chalitza, the poetess are saying she exempts her co-wives from Yibam or Chalitza. However, he is usher to remain with the third and fifth wives, since each of them is a sister to one of his wives. Therefore, if he dies childless, he has bia by a brother with either of them, does not pater her co-wives from Yibam or Chalitza. Okay, Mishnah Vav. Now we're talking, the rest of this paragraph is talking about a Yavam who is not yet an adult. We know that once a boy reaches the age of 9, his act of Bia is legally recognized, although he cannot ordinarily marry a wife until he reaches the age of 13 and becomes an adult. However, since Yibam is based on Bia, does not require intention or consent, Yibam is somewhat different in this respect from ordinary marriage. So let's see. This is the law for the halacha for a boy of 9 years old and one day, who's a yavam, is that who posel he disqualifies the Yevama to his adult brothers by having bia or making maima with her, because she becomes his wife al pi din derabbanan, and his brothers may no longer perform even with her. Posting al yad, and the adult brothers disqualify her to him when they have bia or they make maima with her, so that he, as well as the other brothers, may no longer perform yibum with her. Ela shehu posel tchila, except that a 9-year-old boy disqualifies the Yavama from yibum with the other brothers only when he makes maimah at the beginning, before any of the other brothers do so. Achin posting tchila himself, while the adult brothers disqualify her whether they make maimah at the beginning or at the end. Okay, so how so? How does this work? If a boy of 9 years and one day had bia with his Yivama after an adult brother made mine with her, he's disqualified her from Yibum with any of the brothers. Since the bia of a 9-year-old is legally recognized, it answers her even from an adult brother who had made mine with her. If after the 9-year-old had bia with the Yavama, one of the adult brothers had bia with her, or made maima with her, nafnu get, or gave her a get, or they performed chalitza with her, pasto yado, they disqualified the Yavama from yibum with the 9-year-old, and he may not stay married to her. This is different from the adult brother, where the luck is that once he has bia with the Yavama, she becomes his full wife, and nothing any of the other brothers do have any effect. Okay, and Ben Tesha Shane Biyamecha Shiba Ayavimta. If a boy of 9 years and one day had bia with his Yavama, and afterwards his brother 9 years and one day also had bia with her. Pasal Ayado, the second brother disqualifies her from being kept by the first brother, since the first boy's bia created only a partial marriage bond, does not prevent the second brother's bia from taking effect. Rabbi Shimon says, "Lo pasal." The second brother does not disqualify her because his bia has no effect. Ben Tesha Shanan Mishnah Ches. Ben Tesha Shanan Yom Echad Sheba Ayavimto. If a boy of 9 years and one day has bia with his Yavama v'achakach ba al tzarasa, and afterward had bia with her co-wife, Pasal Ayadid Asma, he disqualifies both Yavamas to himself, since he had bia. Since his bia created a partial marriage bond with both Yavamas, he is usher to both of them. Rabbi Shimon says, "Lo possibly does not disqualify the first Yavama to himself." He holds that an underage boy's bia with his Yavama is questionable, whether makes her his wife completely or has no effect at all. If it has no effect, then neither one becomes usher to him, and when he becomes an adult, he may perform yibum with either one. If his bia with the first yibum took full effect, then she became his wife, and there was no longer a yibum bond between him and the second yibum. His bia with the second yibum was simply a done be'isr that has no effect on his marriage to his wife. If there are 3 brothers and the first one died, and then his brother, who was a boy of 9 years old, and one day had bia with his Yivam, and then he too died, Chaletzes lo Mesibemes, then the widow must perform chalitza with the third brother, but may not be taken by him in Yibum, since the 9-year-old's Bia with his Yevamos treated only as mimer, created a partial marriage with her, which did not completely erase the original Yibum bond. Therefore, they cannot continue to have Yibum with the other brother. Nasa Isha V'meis, if a 9-year-old married a woman, a regular woman, and then died, Harez Zupatura, even if he had be with her, she is pater from both Yibum and Chalitza, because his marriage to anyone other than his Yevama takes no effect at all. She was never legally his wife. And finally, the last Mishnah for today, Mishnah Test, Ben Tesha Shanim Yom Echad Sheba Yevimto. If a man died childless and his brother, who was a boy of 9 years old, 9 years and 1 day, had beer with his Yevama, Mishahedil Nasa Isha Acheres Meis. After the boy became an adult, he married another woman and then died without children, so that both his widows fell for Yibam to a third brother. The halacha is in lo yada as harishana mishahidil. If the boy never had beer with the first woman, his yavama after he became an adult, harishana chaletzes lo mishtabemes. The first woman performs chalitza with the third brother, may not be taken by him yibam, since she has a double yibam bond with him. Shniya or chaletzes or mishtabemes, and the second woman may either the woman that he married after he became an adult may either perform chalitza or be taken in yibum, since she has only one yibum bond. Rabbi Shimon disagrees, and he says, the third brother may perform yibum with whichever woman he wishes, and then perform chalitza with the other one. Echad shehu ben tesha shanim v'yom echad. All these laws that we learned above regarding a Yavam who is not an adult apply whether he is 9 years and 1 day old, or whether he is 20 years old and has not yet grown 2 pubic hairs. Either way, he is not considered an adult. Therefore, the marriages are subject to the halachas that we discussed. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow for Perek Yud Aleph. Have a wonderful day.